Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. I'm Frank.
And I'm Rivka.
And Rivka, it's lovely to see you. Haven't seen you in a minute. You were just out of town on a little vacay.
Got a little vacay out, yeah.
And I wish that we were getting together under happier circumstances, but right off the bat, we're going to talk about the wildfires that have been devastating Los Angeles for the last week or so. I think, they're still burning, but aren't doing as much damage as they were at the top of last week. But I know for the two of us, as people who lived in LA for a number of years, this has been extremely difficult to watch from afar.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we can have a little bit of a conversation in our wheelhouse. I'm sure everyone's been listening, reading about coverage about these fires, so we're not going to dig too deep on the whole story, but I guess we could just start, how is it, what's been your feeling watching all this unfold?
Well, you touched on it. Heartbreaking, devastating, overwhelming. I feel like that's been a common theme, overwhelmed. I think the first thing was just making sure we have so many people out there.
Yeah.
And making sure everyone's okay. And there's varied levels of what okay even... no one's okay, but in terms of safety, immediate safety.
Yeah.
Of course, there's concern about what does it mean. This is going to be a long-term thing for anyone. The amount... For anyone who hasn't seen this, it's like if you're familiar with how big Manhattan is, the space that's been burned is far big, covers far more than just Manhattan alone. So it's massive. The damage is massive.
And widespread all over the city. Different fires burning in different places. And now, even with the fires not being the immediate threat, the air quality has now become basically toxic between all of the homes burning, asbestos, lead paint, aluminum, everything that's now in the air.
Well, it makes me think back to 9/11 and just how long that affected our air quality. And yeah, you might have blue skies, but that doesn't mean there wasn't just this toxic shit. And how many lives were taken from that? So that the danger is it's never just what you see immediately on the surface. So, and also just, we both have mutual friends who lost entire homes, high schools, places that we both love. It's really, I've been finding the grief coming in waves of just what it is to lose that much. And the rebuild will be there, and we'll talk about how incredible it is to witness what we do have. And I know we're going to talk about the mutual aid and all of that, but it's a very specific loss of that it's never going to be the same. Never
going to be the same. And obviously a tragedy like this is never welcomed, but coming at the time that it has now, right after the dual strikes of last year, as the cost of living in LA is skyrocketing, as the entertainment industry has contracted and there are less jobs going around.
The pandemic that was never recovered from.
That was never recovered from. This is going to be a huge blow to working class creatives in Los Angeles who have already been. We both have friends in LA who over the last year have been there's no fucking work right now. There's nothing out there. People who have worked consistently for years, and now adding this on top of all of everything that was happening already with the entertainment industry eating its own tail. I don't know. I don't know what this, I don't think anyone knows what this is actually going to mean for the long term yet, but it's definitely not good.
And as I'm sure our listeners know, our angle is that this is obviously inevitable in late stage capitalism. This is what has been discussed. This is what has been warned about. People have talked about how creatives like Octavia Butler have pointed out this exact thing happening in Parable of a Sower.
Did you ever read Parable of a Sower?
I did, but I have to.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I don't know if I have to right now, but I was like, I should read. I haven't. And just the pointing out, I don't remember all the details, but the pointing out of it is, and it's not because I don't think she was psychic. I do believe in that, but I don't think that's what was going on. I think it was like she had a very profound understanding and analysis of just what the inevitability of a capitalist system. And it's not, it's not.
She was well researched, is what she was.
A surprise. She's well researched, and it's not a surprise. Like, this is why really taking time to understand these systems, because they work the way they're supposed to work. It's not like something's awry in the field of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, she's researched. ExxonMobil is well researched. If you want to know the plan, they've done all the research. We're rewatching Mad Men, which I think did I mention this to you?
Oh no, hell yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a Mad Men rewatch, which has been, I don't know, dark. So dark. So fucking dark.
Let's save that for another episode. I would love to dig into Mad Men.
We will. But it just made me, just all the Exxon, just like, it was kind of profound to be like, oh yeah, just watching like this, the brewing of the ad campaigns and the ExxonMobil and the like, fuck this environment. Yeah. So we're not of the belief that any of this is natural or accidental, are we? Neither of us are of the belief that this is not something that we are able to, like, that we're not able to do a giant systemic change around.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
And that there aren't very key factors that are very clear, such as defunding a fire force in order to refund and replenish a LAPD, like your whole police force. That there's not something severely wrong when you have police out who are able to arrest quote unquote looters in the middle of one of the biggest disasters ever.
Yeah, that's the one. So this is one of the angles that we wanted to touch on, was specifically the role of.
Yeah, I'll let you. I know you have a lot on this, but like that's my kind of main point is like the exasperation of these situations is inevitable. Under capitalism, will get worse. We've been told this, and we're seeing it happen. And so now we're also learning in real time about how do we come together, knowing these are sort of inevitable consequences of this system of capitalism that we're under.
Yes, because society is not organized around human flourishing, human happiness, human well-being, because society is organized around capital, then when a crisis like this arises, all of the resources are going in the wrong direction.
Yes,
so,
very simply put, there was that meme that I think Harvey sent us, I'd seen too, but like firefighters, resources like that, socialism, insurance companies, capitalism.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I just wanted to touch on was, I guess, the police response to this crisis, which has been, as far as I can tell, to do absolutely fucking nothing other than hold many press conferences saying, we're going to catch the looters when the looters show up. And there have been reports of police stopping people from returning to their burned down homes because they're suspecting them of being looters. The National Guard has been deployed in Los Angeles just to protect neighborhoods from looters. I've seen reports that they're actually ticketing organizers for handing out food, handing out supplies, for just being around in these places. So it really begs the question, if in a time of great crisis like this, if the police don't do anything and are in fact actively making things more difficult, what is the fucking point of police? And I'm not even talking about just like they don't do much, like they don't do anything. Like they don't help with supply distribution, they don't help bring much needed relief to people, they don't help fight the fires. All they do is hold a gun and say, you all better behave or we're gonna get involved. So why are they sucking up the absolute most resources of any city? Police don't prevent crime. Police rarely solve crime. All they do is respond to crime. So if something like this happens, why do we have police?
Well, Lenin talks about this in State and Revolution. If anyone's curious, this is not new because the police are there to serve the property-owning class, the capitalist class. And I think, as you're pointing out, it's never been more obvious. Like, it is obvious, but in these moments it becomes so profoundly obvious. It becomes profoundly obvious in moments of revolution when you have any kind of protests and they care more about the property than the people. They're there to protect the property, the capital, the capitalist class.
Conversely, a group of people that have been doing a lot to help fight these fires are incarcerated people, inmates in California's prison system. And I'm sure if you're a listener of this show, you've probably been reading about this, about how I think it's around 1,000 of the firefighters fighting these fires are incarcerated people. And if you don't know, we're just going to do a quick breakdown of these programs. So these work programs exist. Prisons across the country, there's different types of work that prisoners can engage in. But with this program specifically, this is a way for California to save millions and millions of dollars, and for California's prison systems to make millions and millions of dollars, rather than paying people, the wage deserved for the labor that they are providing. So these inmates are paid as little as 75 cents a day, as little as 75 cents an hour, maximum around $2 an hour. The most I think they can make daily from fighting these fires is about $10.
Yeah, it says probably like $26.90 for a 24-hour shift. For a
24-hour shift. And another huge issue with this program is that a lot of these firefighters, once they get released, cannot get jobs as firefighters if they are convicted felons. They are barred from becoming professional firefighters after their release. So this is, there's nothing else to call it. This is like a slavery system. This is like a forced labor slavery system.
Yeah. No, and on top of it, if they die on the job, which is, this is life or death work.
Likely. Yeah.
They basically have to sign away that they get nothing because, of course, they're being treated as if they have no family.
Absolutely horrific system that it's, you learn about these things. And I know I've known about this program for a while, but just like seeing it all refreshed, you're like, we're really not that far away from the 1800s, like things have changed, but this is still slavery. And I got into this with someone recently and they were like, well, it's not slavery. It's not slavery because they have a choice. They don't have to do the program if they don't want to. They don't have to. It's not slavery. And I was like, okay, imagine you're an inmate and someone says to you, hey, you have two choices. One, you can learn this skill. You can get out of the prison. We'll pay you a pittance, but you can be out in the world. You can be amongst people. You can participate in society in a small, meager way. You can do something that actually brings you a feeling of dignity or value or worthwhileness. Or you can stay in this box for fucking ever. What's the choice? Do you want to go out, make a little money, learn a new skill, be out of the prison? Or do you want to stay in this fucking box and not ever leave? Mm-hmm. And like, if you're the inmate, would you be like, oh, thank you so much for not coercing me? Thank you so much for making this not a coercive decision.
And of course there's benefits. We talked about Hassan Piker did interviews that were really great with the firefighters as they're out there fighting these wildfires.
Yeah.
This week, and there are benefits to it, but that doesn't take away from all the facts that we just said, that this is they are not, that 26 for 24 hours is not getting paid. So what happens when you're doing labor that is putting your life on the line, that is serving society like this, and you're not getting paid? It doesn't, it negates all of the other stuff. And then on top of it, when you get out, you can't continue doing that work.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And I brought this up to Frank because the first movie that I ever did, which I loved, was, I realize now, I was young and it was my first gig. And it was for Hallmark, but it was a propaganda film for this exact program, starring Cuba Gooding Jr.
Academy Award winner, Cuba Gooding Jr.
And I had it was an incredible experience. The director is amazing. They actually are quite radical and have been an amazing voice for Gaza. But yeah, it was kind of exactly to your point. It was like the arc of the story is essentially this gives female firefighters a second life. and he plays the person who starts it. It's like, what does it say? Plays DJ, a counselor at a women's correctional center who dedicates his professional life to helping young people reclaim their own self-respect through selfless service to others. There it is, the selfless service to others. DJ encourages the women to join an elite team that fights forest fires and assists civilian victims of natural disasters. As brave volunteers, the young team members receive a second chance in life. So yeah, there you go. No mention of once they get out, they're not allowed to continue this work that they've built skills in.
No.
They're putting their lives on the line. They're not getting paid and someone's profiting. But it doesn't matter because in this society, we treat anyone in the prison system as worthless until redeemed through life-threatening work.
Yep. And I've also now started to see reports, and I should have found this beforehand, but that prisons are now incentivized to extend inmates' sentences or keep them for to the longest possible duration of their sentence because they're making so much money off of these programs. Jesus. So it's literally incentivizing these prisons to keep inmates in longer, to keep more inmates because they're making so much fucking money off of them. It's truly a disgusting practice.
Just want to add, if this story touches you, and I know that everyone has been trying to figure out everything they can do, but if this story touches you and you have a little extra means, there is an organization, antirecidivism.org. That's antirecidivism.org, that has a campaign going right now. 100% of what their mission is all about ending mass incarceration in California, but they have a specific drive right now. 100% of their profit is going towards these firefighters, getting them money directly for their work, their life-saving work right now.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Last thing, I know we're going along, but really quickly, because it's not all doom and gloom, because if you've been following everything that's been unfolding in LA, you've probably seen the massive amount of on-the-ground organizing and mutual aid that has taken place across Los Angeles communities, spectrums, race, class, gender, what have you, just the people of LA coming together. And I've seen it on our friends' social media feeds, like anyone that's still living in LA, all their feeds have just been like, I'm here. How can I help? Here are resources. How can I help? We have a bedroom. How can I help? It is, as devastating as this has all been, watching the community response it's given me hope, honestly. It's given me hope. I obviously wish that this didn't have to happen, but to see people come together and take care of one another, to see the community come out in such a strong way to fill the gaps that the state has left and that the police obviously aren't fucking doing anything for, has been really inspiring. So just want to highlight that we're told constantly by our ruling class that it's every man for themselves and people do not give a fuck about one another. It is dog eat dog. That is false. That is what the ruling class believes because they don't care about other people. They only care about themselves. But it turns out that regular working class people actually show up for one another in times of crisis. So
1,000%. And, the mutual aid is sustainable. What is not going to be sustainable as we continue on, my belief, is what we've been seeing with healthcare forever, but it really becomes exacerbated now, is this sort of, I don't know about you, but the overwhelm of the GoFundMe pages, how many there are, and just that you have to then choose between where you send your resources. Like, eventually we are going to have a systemic change where this is taken care of by our government.
Yeah.
Because people, that's not like an okay alternative. It's what we're doing now, but it is not. Healthcare should not be paid for by GoFundMe pages, and neither should disaster care. Nope. Those should be human rights.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. I'm sure we'll be touching on this again in the near future as this is an ongoing situation. But let's get to our conversation. Definitely a vibe change into our conversation about the Weird Al Yankovic movie UHF. But before we do, just a quick reminder to our audience that we don't sell ads on this show. We rely on community support to keep it going. So if you'd like to do that, you can subscribe to our Patreon.
That's right. For $5 a month, you get access to new bonus episodes and our entire back catalog of bonus episodes. We have some great ones in there. Our Patreon link is in the episode description, in your podcast player, or at mvcpod.com. And just a reminder, we now have this amazing editor, John. So it's 3 of us doing the labor. And all of the money that you give to our Patreon goes directly to supporting our labor for this podcast.
Mm-hmm. You can also rate, review, or subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player. It helps other people find the show, and also you won't miss new episodes when they drop.
That's right. Oh, also a reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you are part of a leftist or progressive organization and you would like to run an ad on this program, please email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with our conversation about UHF with Jade Kim. Hey everyone, it's Frank here. So after the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles, Rivka and I just wanted to take a moment in this mid-roll spot to direct you to some online resources if you would like to contribute to the relief effort. Honestly, there are so many different organizations doing incredible grassroots organizing on the ground. It would be impossible to name all of them, but the Mutual Aid Los Angeles network has done an incredible job of putting together a massive list of all of the different places where you can help out. And you can find that list by going to mutualaidla.org. That's mutualaidla.org. They have a bunch of different opportunities from donating to volunteering. If you're able to help out in any way, this is going to be a long recovery for the people affected by these fires in LA. All right, everyone, stay safe. And now back to the show. All right, today we are joined by Jade Kim. Jade is a science communicator and YouTube host who has recently ventured into covering labor issues and working class solidarity in STEM. Ooh, oh, very interesting. Okay, we're gonna talk about this. Jade has been obsessed with Weird Al since she could walk, and to this day remains a shamelessly unabashed stan. She currently works in the nonprofit sector, helping women and students of color build careers in STEM. Jade, welcome to Movies versus Capitalism.
Hello, Frank. Hello, Rivka. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's so exciting to have you on. I knew little of you until we read your bio, and fascinated, really interested in your work with STEM. Can you tell us more about that? How did you get into the field? Tell us a little bit more about, your work in that field.
Rivka also works with STEM. I'm going to brag on you for a second. Also works with STEM students in theater.
In theater, yes. We come in and do some improvisation and help with communication. But thank you, Frank. Yeah, that's been I know a little of the world through that lens.
Wow, wait, that's really cool. So you work in the science comms kind of?
Yeah, so we go into, there's just these amazing students who are working throughout the school year, but this is in the New York City school system, but they're getting paid. A lot of them are paid internships to work actually in labs with scientists. So they're really doing like the real deal research, and we're coming in to sort of help them be able to communicate that and how to talk about that and have the social skills needed so that they can share all of this amazing information. So I learn a lot of cool stuff and scary stuff every year.
Yeah, no, actually oh my God, I'm sorry. I just unplugged my charger. 1 second. I got too excited. You're doing the Lord's work, because science communication is going to be so imperative in these next few years, especially. So keep on keeping on.
When I read science communicator in your bio, what does that mean? Can you just explain that to the layman who might not know? Because that's a new term that I haven't heard before, science communicator.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've all seen Bill Nye, we've all kind of seen...
Love.
Exactly. Sure. Like back in the day, like Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson. So these are kind of like the titans in like OG science communication. And so I actually originally went to school for astrophysics, and I did not didn't last very long.
Okay.
And I had a little bit of an existential reassessment of my life. And so I realized that, as amazing as the work is, I just couldn't picture myself being happy in like a research environment. And so I actually completely changed my degree, and I got a degree in public relations and nonprofit management. No degree should ever be that convoluted, but here we are. Basically, what I got to do with my career since then is I worked at a science museum called the Griffith Observatory for about almost a decade. Basically just doing.
Wait, you worked for the Griffith Observatory?
Yeah, yeah.
I've never known anyone who worked there.
So
that's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, weirdly enough, there's like a lot of like improv actors and comedians that kind of work there as like a side gig.
Interesting.
Which is like
That
really
makes sense.
cool. Yeah, it definitely. And so I kind of just was very lucky to be able to do like just yap about science essentially. Basically try to take these concepts that people otherwise think might be intimidating or too complicated. In reality, nothing is too complicated to at least get like a elementary understanding of, and that's what Carl Sagan used to kind of be a huge proponent of. Because before, scientists were kind of like very weary of trying to communicate their ideas with the public because they thought, oh, they're too dumb, they don't care, why would they listen to us, blah, blah, blah. And Carl Sagan came in and was like, if you can't explain your research or your experiments in a way that anybody can understand, then you yourself probably don't have the best grasp on it. And so here I am. And then I was super lucky to be able to find a nonprofit that I've been working with for the last 7 years now that specializes in working with, we used to call it high potential, low resource students, but really zeroing in on women and minorities because there is, the numbers are dismal across the STEM industries for both women and minorities. So we go in, we try to provide them with resources and internships, learning resources, and things like that to kind of get them, jump started on some sort of career. And I do some YouTube stuff on the side, and I feel like I've been yapping a lot. That basically covers it.
No, this is awesome to learn about. I love learning about like more specialized fields that I have absolutely no knowledge base for. And I think I think that sounds like the work that you're doing is like extremely vital and important. So that's amazing.
Thank you very much.
I'm curious about the intersection of this and your class politics and when that sort of became, a part of what you were awakening towards, and how does that combine with the STEM work that you do?
Because Jade, we met via Instagram because I came across some of your labor videos.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, by the way. That's a great question. I get really excited about it too because I was definitely like your typical bleeding heart liberal for longer than I care to admit. Before I really started reading like Parenti, and I think we all started there, and working in the sector that I do, I come across just a ton of students and young people who are born into the wrong zip code, or they're born to parents that just have generational struggles. And I see time and time again that the difference between somebody graduating from like an Ivy League school going on to be this big successful tech guy versus the kid born in like Watts who can, only is able to eat at school. The only difference between those two is, the resources, the material conditions that they had. Fundamentally, though, there's nothing about the Ivy League kid that makes him inherently better or smarter. And that really just kind of sticks with me. And I think, so I grew up in a very, I would say, economically disadvantaged home. I was homeless throughout high school. And the realities of the approaching late stage capitalism have always been very visceral to me. And now that I work, I have the privilege of working with students who come from very similar backgrounds. I see the effects every single day of the exploitation, of the systemic issues that are just continuously being perpetuated by both parties, both Democrats and Republicans, especially nowadays. And I'm not going to lie, actually, I started to become very radicalized towards leftist politics when I discovered Hassan Piker, which I'm sure you might have heard of him.
Sure.
Hassan Abi, yeah. And I remember I was watching a video of him breaking down like what happened between the U.S. and Cuba and the embargoes, and how despite America, making it its goal to destroy Cuba, Cuba is still insanely successful in many ways, being the super high literacy rates, exporting doctors, thriving in a socialist system, despite the fact that America is such a goddamn troll beyond that. And I think that's kind of where I was radicalized is that, and then seeing that, especially in the sciences, in STEM in general, you have a lot of extremely passionate, hardworking people. But unfortunately, those types of people are very easy to take advantage of and exploit because I always like to use SpaceX as an example, because when you go to work building rocket ships, you're not just doing it because it pays the bills. You know, you're doing it because you have a hardcore, soul-wrenching desire to see, our civilization go into space. And that is something that you'll never part with. However, when you have these big tycoons like Musk, it's an easy way to kind of not trick people, but to kind of make them work and completely neglect anything else except work, and they'll be completely fine with it because they're going towards this big mission. And there's no such thing as like a work-life balance. And they do get paid mostly very well. There's good benefits. But anyways, I don't want to get too into that. But yeah, so that's there I am.
No, that's so interesting to hear that. It honestly sounds a lot like arts workers. Rivka and I both went to theater school, and yeah, I think hearing you speak about the way that passion within the science community is exploited by the capitalist system, and like you're saying, like people like Musk, is very similar in the way that like passion within the arts community is also very easily exploited by people who want them to, do all of this labor for free, or, beg, borrow, and steal to try to just get a job or whatever. This is fascinating. I could talk about the like science and the arts all day, but we do have to talk about a movie.
We do have a movie to talk about.
Ooh,
a movie that you both passionately brought to the table. We're talking about UHF. Mm-hmm. This movie was directed by Jay Levy, written by Jay Levy and Weird Al Yankovic, starring Weird Al, Michael Richards. Yankovic?
With a hard...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with a hard K at the end. Yeah.
Yankovic. I have the real fans in the house. Starring Weird Al, Michael Richards, Fran Drescher, Victoria Jackson, and Kevin McCarthy. The budget for this movie was $5 million. It grossed $6 million worldwide. It made a bit of a profit. We may be spoiling it for you if you've already seen it. If you haven't seen it, I had never seen it.
I doubt many people have seen this movie.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little context. This movie follows the hapless George Newman, played by Weird Al, who can't keep a job due to his vivid imagination and tendency to daydream, who is gifted an independent TV station by his rich uncle to run as he pleases. When George's bizarre TV ideas become bona fide hits, his little station draws the ire of the CEO of a local network affiliate, Channel 8, which attempts to destroy the station.
So a little bit of historical context for when this film was released on July 21st, 1989. This is the first movie we have covered from 1989. We've done a bunch of 80s, but never...
Filling in the gap.
Yeah, fill in the gap. So what's going on in America? In January, George H.W. Bush sworn in as the 41st president of the United States. In March, President Bush bans the importation of certain guns deemed assault weapons into the United States. Just wanted to point that out. Not a huge event, but found it very interesting that a Republican president was able to ban assault weapons in 1989.
Those were the days.
Anyway, who would have thought we'd be looking back on the halcyon days of George H.W. Bush?
He wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't. Also in March was the Exxon Valdez oil spill, in which the Exxon Valdez oil tanker spilled 240,000 barrels of oil after running aground in Alaska's Prince William Sound. In July, the television show Seinfeld premieres. Also in July, Nintendo's Game Boy is released in North America. And in November, the Berlin Wall in East Berlin is brought down. So a somewhat eventful year. Nothing too crazy.
So, Jade, we like to start off the conversation by asking every guest, why did you pick this movie to bring to this podcast to discuss?
Definitely. So I had noticed that, I think it's... Frank, your profile picture is you dressed as Weird Al, if I'm not mistaken?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and so it's amazing.
Halloween costume.
Perfect, yeah. I myself have dressed up as him a couple times for a couple different occasions. And it's very exceedingly rare to meet somebody who not only has like kind of heard of Weird Al, but is like a fan. And I've been obsessed since I was very little, just because I had a DVD of his most popular music videos, and I would just play it on repeat all day, and I learned every word to every song. And then I had UHF on VHS. And again, it's like, it was between that.
Oh, damn. Wow.
Yeah, it was back in the day. And so it was like that and like Kevin Smith videos. I was not very well supervised, obviously, at a young age, but I would just watch those on repeat. And as I grew older, my admiration for Weird Al has only gotten just wider and wider, because he to this day has just stuck to his guns of like, nothing is that serious. And I'm always going to try to make people laugh, and I'm not even going to try to be like super vulgar with it, which is super impressive. And I love vulgar humor, obviously. I like Kevin Smith, but like, I appreciate his commitment to wholesomeness. And when you brought up, this is a fantastic idea for a podcast, by the way. I was like watching some of your past episodes. I was like, this is so
thank you.
clever. But yeah, of course. And I was thinking about it, and like, you know what? And I'm shocked I had never like made this connection before, but like UHF is the literal perfect example of what happens when you have this big corporate media conglomerate try to come up and swallow like tiny little independent channels, and just kind of homogenize everything, and everything is sterilized, and everything is all of a sudden like has a very like corporate tinge. And I mean, in the movie, you see this hero's journey of Weird Al. He's given this dying television station. And instead of kind of just rolling over and allowing it to get taken over, he starts working with and hiring these extremely creative individuals in the immediate community. He's not working with like movie stars or TV stars. He's working with like the everyday working person. You have this amazing hero come out of the movie, Stanley Spadowski. He's a janitor who's down on his luck. Weird Al is like, hey, come work for me. And he's a super passionate janitor, and he does amazing work. And then, lo and behold, he becomes the star of his own talk show. And that talk show goes insanely, they didn't say viral back then, I don't think, but it goes insanely viral. And just through communal efforts and like worker solidarity, they're able to take this television station, remain independent, employ, again, like your everyday person, and thrive. And I think it's such a beautiful example of like, what real solidarity looks like, and how much movement you can really create by, I know it sounds kind of corny, but, like working together under this like common goal. Yeah, it never clicked before that like that was a very anti-capitalist sentiment.
It's funny, when you recommended the movie, so Jade and I connected because, well, one, I found your videos, and then you saw that I was dressed as Weird Al, and you were like, we're friends now. Mad respect. So when you pitch this movie, I'm also giant Weird Al fan. I don't think it runs as deep as it sounds as it does with you, Jade. Like I think I discovered Weird Al probably middle school, and it was because I didn't really have any culture,
Same.
like whatsoever. My parents didn't give me any culture, so I was really sort of just piecemealing everything together on my own. I did love comedy. Comedy was one thing that I had gravitated towards, and I think it was like early days of the internet. I think I came across a few Weird Al parodies and was like, wow, it's like this. It's like it's like God created him for me. And so, yeah, just like bought every Weird Al CD. I think I had UHF. I might still have it on DVD somewhere in storage. So when you originally pitched this movie, I haven't seen it in probably like 15, 20 years. But I remembered it so vividly. So when you pitched it, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Weird Al starts a little independent station, and then like the big bad corporate station gets angry and tries to destroy it. And yeah, it'll like fit perfectly into an anti-capitalist framework as we're discussing it. Upon rewatch, I had fun. It was fun revisiting it. I was shocked. I was like, wow, a lot of this is so broad, which I appreciate to a degree. And a lot of the politics, as we'll discuss, they're surface level. But I'm curious if there's like more that we can excavate out of it. But Riv, I would love to hear your take as a non-Weird Al fan, being thrown headfirst into this insane film.
Well, I have so many questions for the two of you.
Because I frankly want to know, like, what is it about Weird Al? Like, when you're like, I needed all of it. Like, is it something you can name, or is it just unnameable?
It is hard, you know? It's like, I'm trying to think of like a proper analogy. Like, why are people obsessed with Michael Jackson, you know? I mean, actually, no, that's very easy to answer. He's a very talented man. You know, I think for me, he was like such a source of comfort for me when I was little, and kind of had a really tumultuous childhood. And so he was such a source of like laughter and like lightness. And I started going to his concerts way too late in life, like my early 20s. And just to see, like, even if you're not like a Weird Al fan, just watch like a snippet of one of his concerts. He is a fantastic performer. And you know what? No, I will compare him to Michael Jackson, but only on the performance aspect. He's got different costumes. He's like just so energetic. He's got dances. I saw him when he was touring with a full orchestra, and let's just say it was pretty, life-changing. Yeah. And it's like, I think if you kind of like hear him in interviews and stuff, he's just like a joyous person, Aww, and I love that throughout his entire career, dealing with like literally the biggest superstars of the world, he's always stayed the same old weird guy. Like, he's not afraid to just be awkward and be weird and just like, fuck it, And like that authenticity is so rare these days. And for him to have stayed that authentic for like decades, like, props. I aspire to be like that.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, and I know I put this to you too, but clearly there's many who feel the way you feel. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about this movie. Would not have been made.
There are many. Yeah. And I'll concur with Jade. Weird Al's live show is unfucking believable. He's one of the best live performers you will ever see. I saw him. I've only seen him once, but it was his Hollywood Bowl show a few years ago, and it was. I also saw Chicago and ELO at the Bowl that year, and I'm pretty sure like and Weird Al was better than that. It was crazy.
What was the audience vibe like at these shows?
Just raucous, just so fun. It's just like there's like beach balls going around and like confetti drops and streamers and crazy and he like comes out in these ridiculous costumes and he dances, like he has like choreographed dances that he does, and he's singing the whole time. He also did this really fun thing, at least at my show, where he ran a clips package between songs of all of the cultural references to Weird Al in all of pop culture for all of history.
Seen that.
And the amount of times that he is just referenced and referenced and referenced throughout like pop culture, it's wild. The last thing I'll say about him, as an artist is, Jade, I thought you brought up such a good point about like his wholesomeness. It's something that really anyone of any age can appreciate. It's something that is like an 8-year-old could put the CD in on the car, and they might annoy their parents, but their parents aren't going to be like, turn this, you can't listen to this.
Exactly.
And he also just struck on the brilliant. I mean, he's the one who did it. Like, he struck on the brilliant premise of, I'm going to take these giant hit songs that you all already know, and then I'm just going to do my silly version on top of it. So he's doing Michael Jackson songs, he's doing Madonna, so he's doing Nirvana, except it's just funny. It's just silly.
Do we know anything about his politics?
It's a good question, Jade.
Turns out he's a raging. No, I'm just kidding.
He is a proud boy. No, I'm just kidding. No. He's very good at staying neutral, I think, in a lot of ways. I don't think it's too difficult to kind of assume he's most likely more socially conscious, I would say.
And I don't know, I have a strong take on like when you're that public and you're neutral. I find it problematic. Just because I think it's like
Yeah. And that generation, though.
I don't know. Just the more we get into the show, the more I'm kind of like growing in this. I just feel like everything is political, and to pretend it's not feels intentionally to get by in capitalism.
Oh, for sure.
To benefit yourself and not all. It doesn't feel like solidarity.
Yeah. And especially these days. No, literally, because I mean, back when he was, really starting to get big in like the 80s and 90s, like politics were not near what they are today in terms of the things that have been normalized and like the fascist and racist tendencies that have just kind of become part of your everyday.
Yeah, I mean, there was Reagan.
Oh, there was Reagan. I'm sorry. I guess what I meant is like just so outwardly. I mean, I'm only assuming because I wasn't like there, but just the fact that we have like it's become normalized that we have like KKK marches and like they're like actively promoting the person who's going to be the president of the United States, and things have just become so like gnarly that you're right. Like it's weird to not take a stance because it's one of those things that's like, well, if you're not speaking against it, you are passively for it. Because otherwise...
And not to say that I feel like anyone has to, like, you know, not on the end of, like, we need to know what you need to teach or model, but just to be, like, if you're going to be a person in the eye, yeah. But again, I guess going back to, like, but not saying something is saying something, and your work is inherently, like, I just don't believe in being an artist and not being political.
For sure. And I have the same feeling for people in STEM as well. Because, again, it's like we try to, especially in the sciences... like maintain as objective, as objective as possible. And in a lot of different fields, especially astronomy, it's very much still like an old boys club. So naturally you do have some of those types of tendencies. However, again, especially these days when you have a political party that is so patently just anti-reality and anti-science and pro-alternative facts, you know, there is a literal war on science that has been waged these last 10 years. And the general public, you know, I mean, look what happened with COVID, Dr. Fauci. It's heartbreaking, really.
That's so interesting that you said that, because it's so true how often, like, I'm noticing that now. I think about in the arts a lot, but how this effort to sort of like politically neutralize science topics when it is all about our material world, what is more important to politics?
Literally. Yeah, exactly. And so it's, I was doing research for a video, basically just kind of what we can expect under a second Trump presidency for the different science agencies. And
all good stuff, right?
Let's just say...
Are you going to tell us a little bit? I'm bracing myself.
Let's just say Project 2025. Amazing stuff. This is going to be great. It's not going to be the dark ages at all. We'll see. It's interesting, though, because NASA might actually fare quite well. Space policy tends to be a very popular bipartisan thing that politicians advocate for. However, with Elon Musk in the mix, we can expect to see even more privatization, more budget allocation for SpaceX. But anyways, different topic, but we'll see.
We'll get back to the movie, but I do have one more question because it's just coming to mind, and I think our audience would be curious too. Like, because you're so deep in this stuff, how do you take care of yourself? While also, because I even was like, oh my God, we're about to hear it. I need to prepare myself.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we know it's so bad. And I think a lot of people are like, if there's any, what is the phrase, silver lining? Like if there's any, I think it's contradictions, it's duality. Like there is this sort of like, I think mass exposure right now that's really can have a positive side effect, which is more people being radicalized and more tendencies towards revolutionary thinking and willingness to like listen and kind of hear some of these truths. But you as someone who is like going deep and making important videos about this and teaching, how do you take care of yourself?
Thank you. That's a very sweet question. I would like to say I'm a very well-balanced person. I'm not. I mean, I'm on different psychiatric medications. I'm barely hanging on as it is. But,
same, dude.
I definitely need to touch grass a lot more, but I will say that another one of my heroes is a man named Mr. Rogers, who my beloved cat is named after, who I have a portrait of right here, by the way. This is my cat. God. This is Mr. Rogers.
That is such a good cat name. What a sweet...
He's sleeping in the closet right now because he loves it in there. But
Mr. Rogers is asleep in the closet.
Yeah,
so he has this amazing quote that he said, you know, in times of hardship, look for the helpers. If there's one thing I think that is most important for everyone to remember, it is truly the power of community. It sucks that like these hyper individualistic tendencies and this toxic kind of isolation that we see happening across the entire country, which has resulted in a very large far right uprise because they predate on those types of people. But just, you know, it all starts in the community and it all starts with your neighbor. And so I try to stay hopeful in that. I do think that everyone is at the end of the day, people are good. Like, people have it in their hearts to want to love, and they have it in their hearts to want to be loved. And I think there's a lot of shit that gets in the way of that, especially with your material conditions and other things that are just like a tidal wave of things. But I have hope for the younger folks who are not afraid to speak out and to talk back. I think that's a wonderful trait. I'm a millennial, and I've always had an awkward time even talking on the phone. But here we have these Gen Z and Gen Alphas, and they are on it. So that's kind of how I stay somewhat sane. That, and my cat helps me a lot. So
that's a beautiful, really helpful answer, and a great segue back to the movie, because I think you're right. It was like, that was the strongest part of this movie, was the community coming together to essentially crowdfund the ability for Weird Al's character to buy back this community public, what was really like a public TV station, but bring it back to the public. So I loved that part. I loved that sentiment. Yeah, it took me a while to be able to get into the movie.
Yeah.
I was trying to place it because and it's so funny because, like, having done this podcast and being able to watch a lot of movies from this time, it was like, oh, this felt like pieces of the Gremlins mashed up with Good Burger, mashed up with, like, I was like, it's like all these weird bits and bobs. I'm curious if we can excavate more too, because I also felt like it was a little like surface. And then the one thing that I did think was kind of, I was like, couldn't tell where I was landing on it, because I don't know if I think the programming left me a little like, this is like, I wasn't.
The programming of the UHF station, like the shows they were running?
Yes, of the UHF station, which part of me loved, because I do remember growing up and finding, you know, when you still had like actual TV and not streaming, and as a kid coming across like a late night public access show that was like so weird, and like strange things were being discussed and happening, and you're like, is someone gonna take off their clothes, or are they gonna like eat something weird? Like, what is going on? Who put this on TV? Like, as a child, it was so hard to understand where that was coming from. And I do also, like, I have a soft spot in my heart for pirate radio, because my dad had a pirate radio station for a while. So it reminded me of like those bits too. But then part of me was also, I was torn watching it. I kind of felt like, I was like, this feels a little bit like could be the man, lead to the Man Show. Like, I was worried for like I was like, this feels Man Show-esque. I was like, this could even lead to like a Rogan-esque population of people. Like, I wasn't sure which direction the programming was gonna go.
Town Talk definitely could have gone in a
Those
Rogan direction.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, and I think that's it. Kind of ties back into that satire of like, because you see these random commercials throughout the movie. Like, you see one for Spatula City, you see one for a classic, and you see one for a funeral, right? And like a funeral buffet service.
That burned into my brain.
I think throughout the movie, I think they intentionally interwove in these like kind of just trashy, like kind of weird elements to kind of poke fun at the fact that I'm not sure where talk shows were in that era, but like Jerry Springer, for instance, I don't know when he started, but just kind of poking back at the fun of like the exploitation of just people being people and sensationalizing, you know, themselves or whatever.
Yeah. Yes, like moments I was like, is this going to become an idiocracy world? Like, there were parts that I was like, this feels, you're right, like it was sensationalizing things.
You're absolutely right.
Which politically, I think what it says is like, because the crowd does come together, like what I kind of took away as my lesson from it was like, oh, solidarity, like people, in some ways you could say January 6th was an act of solidarity.
Oh,
it wasn't solidarity on our side, you know, but like,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
But like this to me was like also like when a group comes together, like I guess the lesson learned from watching this was like, it's so much power to be able to have that community. What are you going to do with it? And that was my fear. I was like, I fear for where this is going because they seem to have no politic at all, and how necessary like politics is for that when you have that kind of power amongst, like, what do you do with that, you know?
No, exactly. And that's a very good thing to stay aware of too, because like you said, like January 6th was, I mean, it wasn't for the right thing, but it was a beautiful demonstration of what a group of people can do when you got them riled up and they have an idea for something. And I think it's been said all the time, but like billionaires have the best sense of class solidarity of any group in the world. And they will always look out for each other, even if they are diametrically opposed in every other way possible. They will always come back to like, hey, you know what? We're in the same club, you and I. Let's look out for each other. And that's why those culture war issues, they're so insidious, but they're so effective in dividing all of us up. I've always tried to make the case that like a non-binary barista in West Hollywood has more in common with like an old coal miner in like Appalachia than they do with like any billionaire. And there's so much more that brings us together than, they would definitely try to have you believe. But the thing is like, it's dangerous to have people realize that, hey, if we work together and we do like a general strike, we could literally topple this country if we needed to. But, can't have that. So
this conversation is making me think of something, especially like in relation to this movie, but I think it also applies more largely to, I don't know, I'd call it, let's say, liberal art creation or liberal storytelling, which is, we're discussing the anti-capitalist themes of this movie, UHF. But I doubt, in fact, I know for a fact that Weird Al and his manager, Jay Levy, when they were writing the movie, did not seek to write an anti-capitalist, an anti-capitalist fable. They just wanted to find a movie idea that allowed them to just do video parodies with no explanation whatsoever. So they were like, all right, the guy's got to run a TV station or something, I guess. So it's interesting because like we're saying, Weird Al probably doesn't have like a very cohesive coherent politics. This movie doesn't really have a super coherent politics, but I think it's interesting. I would imagine Weird Al is a good-natured person, and we see this like in liberal storytelling often end up landing on something that is close to an anti-capitalist theme within their stories, because I feel like that is something we all inherently understand, even if you do not identify as anti-capitalist. The story tropes are tropes we've seen in so many movies, but it's like stuff that we all inherently understand of like big business bad, community good, people over business good, people come together to beat big business good. These are things we see over and over again. They're not like inherently anti-capitalist, but that it's just such a core of liberal storytelling, which is encouraging because I think it speaks to the idea that most people, I think, if they had a in-depth understanding of anti-capitalist theory, would ultimately be like, oh yeah, that's what I am,
100%. And again, I think just the hardcore decades of Red Scare propaganda that is like on every page of every history book that every student in America has ever read. It's so like, it's like a cancer, or it's like herpes. I don't know. It's just something that sticks with you and it never really leaves. Even if you are as radical, like have read every Marx book or whatever, everybody still will always have like a little bit of some sort of thread of Red Scare in them, because that's how, if you grew up in America, in the American education system, you were always taught these like very one-sided type of things. And unfortunately, you can have somebody watch a movie like Star Wars and cheer for the rebels, and then come back and like support Trump. And it's like, do you not see that like Trump is just a less badass Darth Vader? Or, that like, and I think there is a lot of cognitive dissonance that a lot of Americans are not quite ready to face head on, particularly with their support of billionaires and their kind of thinking that we still live in a meritocracy. But, people who do like what you do, and you have these types of shows that like kind of explore these themes very creatively, are so important, because you need to reach as many people as you can in as many ways as you can. Because if you see like somebody dressed up in like a Soviet uniform and all of a sudden they're talking about like communism, it scares a lot of people away because they immediately think like, oh God, what is this? I've read Animal Farm. This is terrifying. But then, you present it to them in a way that's like, hey, no, like this is what we're talking about. Wouldn't it be great to have healthcare?
It's so funny because when I read Animal Farm, because I had such a different education, I think just bopping around to different schools in New York, not that they're all like that, but for some reason I got lucky. And also because my parents were lefties. My reading of Animal Farm, like it shocked me when people were like, yeah, this is about communism. I was like, what? I thought this was about fascism.
It's literally,
I was like, I'm so confused now. And it took me a long time to understand what Red Scare was because that was just not part of my upbringing.
And I remember, you know what? I'm so glad I'm not the only one who was like, are we sure this is about communism? But it's like, of course they'll try to twist everything to make it seem anti-red or anti-socialist, but no, I'm definitely with you on that. Like, all right, if you say so.
I do want to make a slight amends to Weird Al because I did Google it. And I guess, I mean, he's still kind of apolitical, but he did do, I guess, some political humor for like during the Trump Biden campaign. He did some political songs. So. Okay.
In support of Biden?
Biden.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure that the headline would be like, he's a Trumper. Yeah, he's got a mask on. It says
yeah,
vote.
We definitely would have heard about Weird Al if he was a Trump supporter or something. But I don't think anyone's going to him for political takes. Like, no one has hit him up in the last week and been like, Al, do you agree with Bernie Sanders that the Democrats have abandoned the working class?
For sure not, yeah. No, his politic goes as far as like vote. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Like he's a vote liberal.
That's like, oh God, dude, the just the focus on like celebrity endorsements this cycle has been so infuriating in general though. Like I know like the Democratic Party's asking for money now because they're like millions of dollars in the hole. And then I saw like how much they might have spent on getting people like Beyonce, Taylor Swift.
Insane.
How out of touch can you be?
I couldn't believe that because I'm still so naive. I just assumed they were donating.
Me fucking too.
I did too.
Fucking too.
We
all just learned about this.
Paying these motherfuckers?
These motherfuckers. They paid Oprah $1 million fucking dollars.
Well, now Rolling Stone says Oprah Winfrey's team denies she was paid personal fee to appear, but it says personal fee.
That's some bullshit. They
paid her LLC.
Yeah, they paid her an appearance fee. They paid her whatever, like a consulting fee, whatever. But like, they're paying these celebrities to appear at their rallies. Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm so glad I'm not. I felt so dumb. I was like, I guess it makes sense, but like...
I felt dumb too.
I thought they were doing it because it was like from their conscience. Like, I have to put my weight behind this.
They're like, I'm already rich and famous. I'm going to donate my time to this political cause. I think these assholes are getting paid. Jesus.
And we wonder why, like, really? My God.
Spending $500,000 a day for the Globe or for the Dome in Las Vegas. Just such a waste of money.
And like speaking of like the rising tide of celebrity endorsements, I don't know if you were ever a wrestling fan, but there's been a trend of WWE wrestlers who have come to the helm of Donald Trump, like the Undertaker and Stone Cold.
Oh, that makes my partner's big into that world.
Yeah, and like I'm not gonna lie, the Undertaker broke my heart, but again, it's like okay, I can see it, but who refused to endorse Trump and actually went the other way is Mick Foley. He was Mankind and Dude Love. Kind of, again, like the silly...
Mankind was... Oh, hell yeah. He was always my favorite.
Exactly. Mankind chose the right side. Great.
Mankind's on our side. Mankind. Sick.
Yeah. And, I mean, it makes sense. He has this whole book on, like... I haven't read it, but I heard it's very enlightening about, like, kindness and acceptance and stuff. And so it's like, you know what? Fuck yeah. I'm glad we have him. They can have the old fucking whatever. That's fine. I'm glad we have... Dude Love.
While we're talking about celebrity endorsements and wrestling, I do have to say, I know this is not wrestling, this is boxing, but one political boxing thing I am hyped about is that Mike Tyson will be fighting Jake Paul.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear about this? And and Jake Paul's we all know he's such a fucking douchebag, but particularly for Puerto Rico and like how much he's involved in just like the tax schemes there and extrapolating so many resources from that island and just being a fucking asshole. So this is like really exciting. And I think Tyson was wearing a Palestinian flag in one picture. Like we're
really
hyped. Tyson is, I think I saw a post with that. Yeah. So Tyson's back with the...
I think Tyson, I'm not going to go so far as to endorse Tyson wholly as a person.
Because of the ear biting? I don't know any. That's all I remember.
Ear biting,
as a
I think there
child.
might also be some like
Abuse.
Yeah,
sure.
maybe. I'm not, I don't recall exactly, but hey, I hope he beats the shit out of Jake Paul.
I hope it's a real fight and not just kind of like a weird publicity stunt.
Yeah, Mike Tyson's was wearing a Palestinian flag.
Hell yeah. So what's really cool about like the fighting world, whether it's like UFC or boxing, is there's a ton of Muslim fighters. And so there's a ton of Palestinian solidarity which is fascinating because you have somebody as like reactionary and conservative as Dana White leading the UFC, but even he knows like he can't talk shit on Islam. He can't be Islamophobic, and he can't, despite who he supports politically, because his biggest fighters are like Muslim dudes. And
oh, wow.
It's like the one kind of heartwarming thing. Like I'll admit UFC is kind of like my guilty pleasure, but to see the solidarity and like a lot of fighters in their victory speeches will talk about Gaza and West Bank, and it's like it's a little bit of random heart warmth in an otherwise kind of field dominated by bloodshed and reactionary politics.
Yeah, big time. That's so much of what we've been hearing after these. I mean, we're recording this pretty fresh after the election, and just reading so much about, the male dominated spaces such as fighting, such as gaming, that have just been infiltrated by all of these really just like right-wing reactionary figureheads who then radicalize young men down the alt-right pipeline. So it is, like you're saying, it's encouraging to know that, because I didn't know anything about, I know nothing about the UFC, and I did not know that there was like a slew of Muslim fighters. That's awesome.
I can't believe this is so great. Like all the little areas we're getting into with this movie.
Yeah.
I'm glad this is becoming like a broader conversation about entertainment and media. But back to the movie I did quickly before we get off of, there's not a ton, we've done a lot of the digging, but I did like, and Jade, you mentioned this, sort of the over sensationalized way that a lot of these film parodies are portrayed, like the Jerry Springer stuff, the Crazy Eddie car salesman who's going to club a seal if you don't come buy his cars.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And I thought it was another Spatula City. I thought it was another place where they just sort of stumbled onto something that might actually have some sort of political critique, like how we're saying like television at this time had become so sensationalized and so extreme. Like this is like the era of it. If it bleeds, it leads. Yeah, the rampant consumerism of something like Spatula City that just specializes in like one bespoke product. All that stuff is very fun, and I think ends up hitting on something. Hey, we already talked about Town Talk. This is so silly, but and then lastly, I really loved that, because I remember that they do like basically a big telethon to save the UHF station. I did not remember that they are selling stock to the station. It's not even that that Al is going to become the sole proprietor. It's a telethon to sell stock and to raise the money to save the station. So they actually, in that, stumbled onto really like a cooperative structure, public ownership of something, which is like very, very socialist.
Extremely. The most, one would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like we've kind of been talking about this whole time, it just goes back to the power of the group, of just the people coming together. Look at Bernie Sanders. He ran an amazingly successful campaign based on small contributions from a bunch of people. Because especially, not only in politics, but especially when it comes to media, it's like you feel like you're not going to be able to be a fair player, because unless you have just millions or billions of dollars behind you. And in order to get that type of capital, you have to definitely sell your soul to some sort of corporation. But Bernie Sanders came out and said, no, if I just campaign based on everyday working class issues and like actually address head on what's wrong with this country, people will support me. And they did. And they came out in droves, and he raised a bunch of money. Again, I think it's one of those lessons, I think, that I don't know how much it sticks into society's memory, how effective we can be if we all worked together. But I think it's a lesson that the powers that be would want us to forget very quickly. Because again, if I were like, big capital owner, billionaire, top 1%, Like, all right, this is my president. He's going to make my laws. He's going to deregulate my industry. Oh my God, there's like all my workers are striking and stuff. It's like, I'd be shaking in my boots. I wouldn't want them to know that if they worked together, they can overpower me. So it's, it's good to keep us scared and kind of dumb and kind of lazy. But, look what can happen if, we all pitch in.
All right. Is it time to give this movie some much needed awards?
I think so. I think there might be a couple last little tidbits that we'll dig into at the awards. So, Jade, we have 3 awards that we give to each movie. Our first award is the Best Politics Award. This goes to the character with the best politics in the movie.
Oh, man.
I wish I knew whose idea it was to give the stocks.
Yeah, because whoever that was
real has some politics there.
Yeah, it might have been. What's Bob Newman's best friend's name? Guy with the
Bob.
He's like balding, the curly hair. Bob. Yes.
Yeah, Weird Al is George.
He's George Newman.
He's George Newman.
His best friend is...
And his friend is Bob. Yeah, the most Bob-ass looking dude in any movie ever.
He's a very Bob-looking
So we think Bob maybe?
Maybe
came
because
up with the idea?
He's kind of like the smarter guy. I will say, though, favorite politics would probably have to be Philo, the scientist, because he's got extra-dimensional alien libertarian written all over him. I don't agree with it personally. I think it's fucking rad that he probably is just like completely galaxy-brained politically. So I'd probably say Philo, the scientist. Yeah.
That's actually...
I feel like I gotta go with the scientist, especially with you as our guest.
Yeah.
It feels only right.
And he does save. He ends up being the most instrumental one in actually saving Stanley and getting George back.
That's true.
And then he runs that little video of what's his name making fun of the community. So yeah, Philo the mad scientist. Okay, best politics.
Best politics. All right. So the next award is worst politics. It does go to the character with the worst politics in this movie. I mean, this one's pretty clear, right? It's our
RJ Fletcher.
Yeah, the CEO of Channel 8.
I said I wanted a Rolex.
Oh, I did want to shout out a friend and who was an acting teacher of mine for a while. David Preval plays.
Your acting teacher was David Preval?
Yeah, I studied with him in
What?
LA. He was
fucking Richie Aprile from The Sopranos.
Richie Aprile from The Sopranos.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and became a friend, but he's in this. I don't remember his character's name, but was really, and I appreciate it. I was like bringing it, like
That's
really
so cool.
yeah. He was one of the, I guess, gangsters that tortures.
One of the lackeys. Yeah.
One of the lackeys.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's Stanley Spadowski. You don't like Bonanza? Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, RJ Fletcher has the most coherent evil politics in this movie. I did really love, the thing that actually made me chuckle the most this rewatch was his son, who's another executive at Channel 8, who just keeps showing up being like, Dad! That really got me.
Very, very Jared Kushner, very...
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very fail son energy. All right, and our last award is Best Supporting Character / Spinoff. Goes to your favorite supporting character and maybe a spinoff you would want to see them in.
I would say, what's Fran Drescher's, what is her character's name again?
Pamela Finkelstein.
Pamela Finkelstein. She's amazing. I love that just right as soon as, the introduction of her character in the movie is so funny because they come through the door and she just starts unloading on them like, another boss, blah, blah.
Yeah.
She goes on this amazing little tirade of the instability or whatever. I think it'd be really cool to see a spin-off with her just because she's a woman in media and she's faced with just tons of blatant sexism throughout the movie. But she ultimately kind of gets revenge here and there and is very empowered towards the end. I think it'd be fun to see a little journey of hers.
Totally.
Yeah, I wanted more from that character, and I thought that there was more. I remembered more of a resolution than there is. I mean, there's that little moment at the end where her and Noodles, the cameraman, get back at the guys, but and she gets to do her big broadcast at the end. But yeah, I would want to see an actual movie dealing with a woman trying to enter the broadcast media space in that time. I'm sure there are movies of that. Broadcast news is not really that.
I mean, was Anchorman 2 kind of like that? I can't remember.
Anchorman 1 kind of is like that, but it's not Christina Applegate's story. It's Ron Burgundy's story, so that's it's sort of the secondary plot. But yeah, especially Fran Drescher at this time. She fucking kills it. She was also just in Saturday Night Fever, which we just covered. She's popping up a lot.
Oh, hell yeah. I love that movie.
What do you remember of that? But we could do a little mini Saturday Night Fever. When was the last time you've seen? Because we just rewatched it for the first time in a long time, and we're like, oh, this movie is so dark, but everyone just remembers it as like the fun Travolta disco movie.
The first thing that comes to my mind is the scene. I don't know if it's the opening scene, but it's like where he's like strutting, and it's like the camera pans from like his cool ass boots upwards to him just down the street, and like that kind of stuck with me. I don't remember a ton from that movie. I watched it because I was in high school and a boy I liked that movie, and so we were watching it, and I was like, oh, this actually is pretty cool. But I wouldn't be able to tell you the plot points. I just remember being like, wow, those are really cool outfits, and like they dance really well. And I was a big fan of Grease, so I was like, yeah, this is great. It says everything I could ever want.
Yeah, totally.
Very cool outfits. All right, I think that's it for the awards. Jade, thank you so much.
Thank you.
1 for being here, 2 for selecting this movie. I don't think I'd ever would have gotten the chance to speak about Weird Al at this length had you not. So thank you so much. Before we wrap, the last thing we like to ask our guests is there one thing that you do in your everyday life where you get the chance to practice your anti-capitalist values? And that could be anything from, let's say, an organization you work with to like a daily practice you engage in.
Got it. So we'll go from legal to legally ambiguous. How about that?
Oh, okay.
No, just kidding. We'll see.
Steal
so
more.
I would say do crime. I'm very, very lucky in that my 9 to 5, what pays the bills, is something that is inherently trying to tackle a big issue of systemic inequality in this country. So I'm super lucky on that end. I'm also a card-carrying member of the local DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, which is probably one of the biggest socialist organizations in this country. And there's a ton of amazing local chapters. The LA local chapter is very big and doing a lot of stuff. I used their voter guide for down ballot election stuff, which was super helpful. And they do a ton of like mutual aid, and they do a ton of like grassroots stuff. So that's neat. And I pirate as much as I can, unless I know for a fact that I can support an artist directly. I would say, F those companies that are forcing you to get subscriptions, and they're like, Adobe is one of them. Like now all of a sudden Adobe is, or like software, they're charging subscription prices for what you used to just be able to buy outright. This is so random, but I just try to pirate where I can. I try to steal where I can from the billionaires that I can.
Hell yeah.
I guess that's it. That didn't sound as badass as I thought it would be. I'm
No,
just
that
a
was
little
good.
bit of a neck beard when it comes to internet stuff.
It's good.
But...
No, yeah.
No one has suggested, a form of theft in this section of the podcast yet.
No.
And no, it's, you know what? I condone this full-heartedly.
I think we've had theft before, but not tech
not pirating
piracy.
specifically.
Yeah, but you're not alone in the theft.
Not alone in the theft. And I do a lot of pirating for this podcast specifically because we have to watch a lot of movies, and I'm not always going to pay to rent them. Jade, where can our audience find you and your work?
Yeah, I'm on the old TikTok. My name is the same everywhere. It's kind of long. It's kind of dumb. It's Jade Stradamus. If you just start typing JADEST, it will populate. And I'm on TikTok and Instagrams. I'm not as consistent with content creation as I would like to be, but once I am, it will be spat out on those airwaves.
Cool.
Awesome.
Jade, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So much.
So nice to meet you both.
Nice meeting you.
Too.
All right, take care.
To get ourselves a treat.
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to support the show and get access to our Patreon episodes, the link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com.
Also, a reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you want to run an ad on this show, you can email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
For next week, we will be watching the 1971 classic Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.